All right. Great is the Lord and greatly to be praised. He's to be feared above all gods. He's the beginning and the ending. That's the God of Jesus, the first and the last. The first one to be God, the last. The only wise God, the only true God. The blessed and only Creator, who created all things by himself alone. That's the Father of Jesus, not Jesus. Jesus didn't create anything. Jesus did not create anything. That's all been dreamed up by people. Because Jesus said so. He said, God created. He didn't say when I created. I'm believing that quote over what some mystery people who put together the Gospel of John put in there. It's really quite amazing. If you look at the old versions, I went over that, it says it. It calls the Word of God it. It doesn't call it a him. But then they fell into the trap and they started to believe in the three equal gods. And we have this amazing culture of believing in three separate equal gods when it's not even in the book, not even in the record that we have. So here we are finally at part 6. I'm working my way through John. The next message I'm going to do, the next series will be the contradictions in the Gospel of John. I started the idea when I got to the 5th chapter, chapter 5, and it was just a host of things in there. And so I'm down to about, 7 or 8, accumulating different things. It's a fascinating book, I'll tell you. It's very unlike the other Gospels. So that's going to be very, very revealing, since there are so many contradictions within the book itself and in relation to the Gospels and in relation to the Gospel of Moses, otherwise known as the books of Moses. So we're going to start here at Luke 19, in the strange book of Luke. Very strange book. There's some very strange things in here, in the book of Luke. Okay. Luke 19, 8 through 10. Then Zacchaeus, otherwise known as Zacchaeus, stood and said to the Lord, "Half of my possessions I'll give to the poor, and if I've taken anything from anyone by false accusation, I return fourfold." And Jesus said to him, "Today salvation has come to this house, inasmuch as he also is a son of Abraham." I don't know why that was added afterwards. "For the Son of Man has come to seek and save that which is lost." So to give you some background on this, it's a strange story. We have this guy named Zacchaeus. That's what it says. But people pronounce it Zacchaeus. And he was up in a tree because he couldn't see Jesus. He wanted to see Jesus. And he was a tax collector. And that's what it means when it says, if I've taken anything by false accusation. So he was a tax collector who was literally accusing people falsely of not paying their taxes. It doesn't seem like a very nice person, to say the least. But he's claiming that he's repenting for some reason, and we don't know why he suddenly is repenting, except that he must have had some experience with the Spirit of God, the Spirit of Jesus, and he was a changed man. He claimed. We don't know what happened after that. But the reason I put this here is because this message is going to be all about communism, as in commune. Because that's really what Peter was teaching, and that's really, well, Jesus was teaching giving your goods to the poor, but then, and giving up all your goods. So we'll get into it. Luke 14:33 says, "In the same way also, each one of you who does not forget all that he possesses cannot be my disciple." That's a quote from Jesus. So Jesus here is saying you cannot be his disciple if you don't sell everything you have. That's shocking, really. What preacher will you find that will tell you that? Nobody. Not a one. But just think of that. He's saying each one of you who does not forget, well, if you forget all that you possess, well, then you're selling it, because he said that in the next verse that I'm going to read. He said you have to give away everything, right? So no Christian, according to this strange book of Luke, no Christian is legitimate, and no Christian is a disciple of Jesus if he hasn't sold everything he owns, everything, and given it away to somebody. No, they're not legitimate. These are the words of Jesus, supposedly. But this doesn't say this as much as it does in the book of Luke and other Gospels. So before I go back to the original thing I read, let me read Luke 12. This is the one that I read, I think it was last week. Luke 12:33. "Sell all you have and give it away to people. Provide yourself bags which don't get old, a treasure in the heavens that fails not, where no thief approaches, neither moth corrupts." And I wrote in pie in the sky. So you're going to get all this later, not now, according to this verse. But it clearly says, sell all you have and give it away. Okay? So Jesus believed in communism, because you can't live, if you give away everything, you're going to have nothing, and you're going to be a street person. You're going to be sitting out in the woods with nothing to eat, nothing, no shelter, no clothes, and that's just not something you want to do. But why I read that first verse is because I saw a major contradiction there, because, and it's all in the book of Luke, because we have, somehow or another, Zacchaeus must have heard him preach about this. We just have to assume these things. We don't have, a book as big as the Old Testament about the life and works of Jesus. But it says that he was going to give away half of his things. Half of my possessions I'll give to the poor. Well, that makes him ineligible to be a disciple. Okay? As it says here, unless you forget all that you possess, and sell all you have and give it away, right? Then you can't be a disciple. And he was only willing to give half of his things away, but yet we see Jesus seemed to like that. So we clearly see that there's a problem. There's a problem with contradictions. There's a problem, no doubt, in the accuracy of what Jesus said. I mean, you can just see it right here. Because he's he says, after he says that he's going to give away half of his possessions and he was going to bless the people that he stole from, he says, salvation has come. So he was claiming that this man, Zacchaeus, was saved, or saved from being a rat, from a robber, a legal robber, and, well, saved from owning things, as if owning things are evil, right? And then he's claiming in verse 10 that he was lost and now he's saved. See? So it's pretty clear that he's accepting half of his possessions being departed with. He was accepting only half of his things being sold. But he just said, he just said a few chapters before that, as if it's chronological, that you have to forget all that you possess. See, so what's the truth? Well, obviously the truth is the rational and reasonable thing that, well, I don't even believe in communism. I don't think it works. I'm going to define the word communism. We're going to go to Peter. Peter actually is the example of what I believe Jesus really taught. I think Peter got what Jesus was teaching, because why would he go off? And he was starting a Christian commune. That's what he was doing. That's what Peter was doing. He formed a Christian commune. And we see that Jesus taught that, but we don't have details about it. But obviously, that would make sense. You sell all that you have, and then you give it to the commune. Well, Jesus didn't say that. He just said, give it to the poor. But that would be what you do with the commune, is you give it to the poor in the commune, see? So you'd be fulfilling what Jesus said. So here's the definitions that I put together, so we can define all these terms. A commune is a group of families or single people who live and work together, sharing possessions and responsibilities. And that's what Peter was doing. But we clearly see that it didn't catch on. It just wasn't something that the mass amount of people, the masses, that most people wanted to do. They did not want to have a Christian commune. They were Christian, but that was it. They weren't going to have a commune where they sold everything they had and then gave it to some governmental figure, would be Peter, and he would distribute everything to everybody if they needed anything. Well, who's going to work? Well, that's what you would work out in the commune. Everybody would have to work, you know. So then we define communism, and that's such a byword. It's such a negative term in the American and European culture. In the West, you know, it's such a evil connotation on that word. They just demonize any type of society that does what basically Jesus and Peter taught. What Jesus taught and Peter put into practice. Peter put into practice and applied the teaching. Communism derives from the French word communisme. You can see it right there. A combination of the Latin word communis, which literally means common. See? Because they claim they had all things common with Peter as the head. And then it says, and the suffix is isme. We drop the E off and it's ism. It's an ism, which means an act, practice, or process of doing something. In the medieval Christian church, I wrote this, got this off the internet, Some monastic communities and religious orders shared their land and their other property. Sects deemed heretical, such as the Waldensians, preached an early form of Christian communism. Ah, that's right. Well, that's what Peter was preaching. But you say, oh, that's evil. It's communism. Well, not really. Not really. Although no one's ever done it successfully, it never worked. So I don't know if it's evil, but it doesn't work. It's a commune, a Christian commune. Sounds a lot better when you say that. But when you say communism, so, oh no, not that. You wonder how that would even work, communism, because how would it be fair, really? Say you have a couple of thousand houses in a town, right? And so you're going to have a commune in the town, right? But some of the houses are really big, and half of them are really good, and half of them are not. Well, who gets the ones that are big? If everybody's going to be equal, you can't have such a thing. There's no such thing. I mean, how do you distribute everything equally to people? It's not realistic. It's not practical. It doesn't make sense, really. Because if you have all these clothes, people need clothes, right? So you're gonna distribute them. Well, there's a lot of nice clothes, and then there's a lot of junk clothes. Well, who do you give the? It's not going to be enough to go around. I mean, you can't go out and just buy something on your own, supposedly, because the commune dictates. So when you look at it that way, it becomes a kind of an evil thing. If the commune dictates what you're going to get and how you're going to live, that's evil. That's not freedom, right? I would still think that there's a way to do it, but I wouldn't know what it is. I haven't studied it enough. I haven't studied the governments that have put that into practice. If you look and see how many countries practice communism, there's very few now. Even China, they claim, has incorporated capitalism. That's the opposite. Capitalism into their economy. A large percentage of it, who knows what the deal is. And then Russia doesn't do it anymore. They didn't even name Russia. They did not even name Russia as a country that practiced communism currently. What's up with that? That's the truth. That's what it is. I tried to find some information about that Waldensians, whatever they were, and you couldn't find anything about their Christian communism. You couldn't find anything. I imagine if you dug deep enough, you might. So here it is. Here's all the stuff on Peter's Christian communism. This is obviously what Jesus taught, because Peter believed it, got it, and put it into practice. Because where else would he get such a thing? And the story is strange, because then God supposedly kills a couple of them because they didn't play the game right. So we have Acts. It talks about in Acts 2 and in Acts 4 and Acts 5. And in Acts 2, it says, now all those who believed were together and had all things in common, you see? Because that's what communism is. It's verses 44 and 45. And they sold their possessions, see? Like Jesus taught, and goods, and divided them to all, really, according as anyone had need. To what degree? I mean, just so that they could survive? And who gets the bulk of it. And then you have corruption in communistic governments because they take all the wealth to themselves. You end up finding out that the leaders are living in the lap of luxury, and the common people, or the peasants, they're not living in the lap of luxury. So you give everything to the government, and then they take whatever they want and live like kings and queens, and then they just give whatever's left over, which is a lot, and they give it back to the people to divide among them. I don't see how that could work, but then there is a problem with billionaires somehow. But they do it legally. They sell something, they do something, they provide a service, or they do something, and then they buy something, and then they keep buying things. So it's all legal. They just have a Midas touch, that's all. And some people, can't save a dollar. So it goes on here, Acts 4. And the multitude of those who believed were of one heart and one soul. Neither did anyone say that any of the things he possessed was his own. Oh, I don't like that. It doesn't sound right to me. But they had all things common. Yeah, I don't like that. And with great power the apostles testified to the resurrection of Jesus, and great grace was on them all. For neither was anyone among them in want. Well, that's good, right? That's good. But what about who's working? It also says in the writings of Paul that if any man will not work, they should not eat. They should not be allowed to eat. Okay, so what about working for what you have, right? And the one who works the hardest, which isn't always lucrative, but yet, if you work hard enough, you're going to make a living. But yet, what about working smart rather than working hard? It's hard to work smart, but you can try. People invest their money in different things, and then somehow it takes off. And then some people lose their money. It goes on to say, for as many, in verse 34, for as many as were owners of lands or houses, sold them. Really? And brought the amounts of those things that were sold. Wow. That didn't catch on, apparently. What world were they thinking that they were living in? And it says, and laid the money at the feet of the apostles. Wow. That's strange. And distribution was made to each one according to his need. I've heard the liberals and the Democrats make statements like that. We're going to have a distribution of wealth. See, and that's what they were thinking. They're really socialists, and then socialism is supposed to be the same. It's another term. I think it means the same thing. Socialism, communism, and I've heard them say that, we're going to have, with Obama, we're going to have a distribution of wealth. So they believe in communism, socialism. They believe in taking all the money away, or just, you'd have to take it because they're not going to give it up willingly. People are not going to sell everything just because you ask them. Billionaires are not going to sell everything and give it to the government, and then what are they going to have? Well, then they'll be given back enough to live on, and maybe a larger portion because of the fact that they had so much. They'll be giving, which makes sense, right? I'm kind of exploring this. So they're giving back a bigger portion because they had so much, so that they live very comfortably, right? But they're not going to own, $3 or $4 million mansions anymore. They're just going to own maybe one or two, or maybe, instead of, they own sometimes more than that. Well, some people own thousands of apartments, buildings. They own, there's landlords that own hundreds or thousands of apartments and houses. Now they're buying up houses. They want to buy them all up, and so that everybody has to rent. This is what's going on now, I say. And so that is really been bad for the market, because they have all this money. See, these people have all this money, and they don't even have a loan. They don't even need to get a loan because they have cash. They have like 20 million or 100 million or more, and then they can just buy all these things, all these houses or apartment buildings, and then they just get pure profit from the rent. They're not paying a loan. It's all cash. And they will pay, they're pushing up the prices so that the common person can't buy the house because the prices are too high, and that's what it's like right now. That's what's going on right now. So they laid all this money and wealth at the feet of Peter, and it says at the feet of the apostles, but we have no record. And I realize that we have no other information about any other Christians in the New Testament practicing this, and we have no other record of any other apostle being involved with it. All we have is just Peter being named, although it does say apostles, but they're never named. It's always just Peter. And then we have that name in the next verse, Joseph, which was supposedly the name of one of the siblings of Jesus. That was the name of one of the siblings of Jesus. Now, what does this say? And Joseph, who was surnamed Barnabas, this apparently was a different Joseph. He was surnamed Barnabas by the apostles. Why was he surnamed by the apostles? In other words, that's the last name, right? And, didn't he have his own surname? And why did they give him a first name for a surname? Because we have Barnabas as a first name in the association with Paul and Barnabas. But it tells you, I don't know why, it says Joseph was surnamed Barnabas by the apostles, was a Levite, born in the country of Cyprus. Oh, then it tells you, and he had land, and he sold it, and brought the money and laid it at the apostles' feet. So they're just naming somebody who did it. Okay, whatever. Then we have the problem with God killing two of them. Well, that's what it says. It says that he just killed two of them on the spot because I'm going to talk about it. Acts 5, there's quite a few verses here. 1 through 11. And a certain man named Ananias, with Sapphira, his wife, sold a possession. See, these people, they really didn't want to do this. They would have been much better off. They would probably have lived a much longer life if they had said, we're not going to do this commune thing. We don't want to do this. And they could have just said, bye-bye. Bye-bye. We're going to the next church. We're going to believe without you. Verse 2, and he kept back part of the price, his wife also knowing. Yeah, see, they didn't really want to do it. And apparently they were under pressure. I've thought about this whole passage, this account, quite a bit. And it says, and brought a certain part and laid it at the apostles' feet. They obviously were feeling very pressured that they had to do that. And if they wanted to be part of the group, part of the church group, apparently, they should have just said, we're not in this group anymore. Goodbye. But no, they made a big error. Because it was a dangerous group. For them, it was a very dangerous group. Very dangerous. It killed them, basically. Membership in this group killed them. Very strange. Because then it says, but Peter said, Ananias, why has Satan filled your heart? Satan? For you to lie to the Holy Spirit. Ooh. Because you see, they didn't want to do it, and they didn't want to admit that they weren't willing to do it. They weren't willing to sell their land and then give it to the church. Completely, totally, 100%. All the money that they got from the land and give it to the church completely. They weren't willing. They should have just said, we're going to go elsewhere to go to church. I made a big error doing that. Because they thought it was their own business. And they thought they could just give, and who knows what they gave, because it doesn't tell you exactly how much of the price they gave, how much money, or whatever they called it then, gold and silver. So somehow he had like a word of knowledge, Peter, and he knew what was going on, so he had an extreme advantage over them. I'm sorry, I'm not interested in participating in a group where a guy has a supernatural power, where he knows what you're thinking. No, I'm bye-bye, goodbye. Because then it says, while it remained, was it not your own? Well, yeah, of course it was. And then it says, and after it was sold, was it not in your own power? Well, apparently not. If you wanted to be, they felt obligated to give it all. He asked them to do that. So it's not really clear what was going on, because he's making it sound like, well, you didn't have to give any of it. Well, that's not true. If you wanted to be in the group, with the apostle, the original apostle, the friend of Jesus, right? You were supposed to sell and give everything to Peter, which is not right. Not right. But it's making it sound like they didn't have to do it. No, I don't believe that. Then it says, why have you conceived this thing in your heart? Well, because they didn't want to do it, that's why. And it says, you have not lied to men, but to God. No, they were lying to men. The men were the ones that were telling them they had to sell and give all the profit, give all the money that they made, all of it, all of it. Ultimately, they should have told the truth. They said, look, we're not going to do this. We're only going to give you a portion of it. I don't know why they were afraid to do that. They should have just gone to another church. And hearing these words, Ananias fell down and died. And that was the end of him. So how could that happen? Peter didn't kill him. It doesn't say that Peter struck him. No. Peter hit him after that, and he died. He fell back and hit his head. No. No, it just says that he died on the spot. Well, then God did it. Or some spirit force killed him. Just killed him on the spot. He was actually giving. He was giving to the church. But the fact that that's what preachers will say. They say, well, he lied about it. Well, he had good reason to lie about it. Since he was pressured to do it, he really should have not had anything to do with these people. And then it says, great fear came on all those who heard. Yeah, I'd say so. And the younger ones arose, and they wound him up, and carrying him out, they buried him. So I'm saying they just dug a hole and threw him in? That's nasty. That's nasty. Because that's what it sounds like. It says they carried him out and buried him. So as if they just carried him out into the yard, dug a hole, threw him in, threw the dirt on him. That's nasty. That's terrible. Verse 7. And it was about the space of 3 hours afterward when his wife, not knowing what was done, came in. And Peter said to her, tell me what you sold the land for. So once again, apparently, like I say, Peter had an unfair advantage over these people. He was getting supernatural information from God, from a spirit, about exactly what they sold the land for. Wow, that's an unfair advantage. And she said, for so much. See, they both didn't want to do it. Then Peter said to her, how is it that you have agreed together? Well, I already went over that. To tempt the Spirit of the Lord. To test, that word would be test the Spirit of the Lord. Not testing. They didn't even want to do it. The feet of those who have buried your husband are at the door, and they will carry you out. And then at once she fell down at his feet and died. So we get two people that just died on the spot. And the younger ones found her dead. The younger ones, and carrying her out, buried her beside her husband. Same thing, right? And great fear came on all the churches. Many as heard these things. Yeah, there'd be a lot of fear. And a lot of people that are going to find a new church. Or start a new church, or whatever.